Let us enter with reverence, seeking the one who holds all things in love. The dam bursts tonight, chosen one. Someone who assisted in planning the most intricate character assassination effort against you is going to crumble tonight because to their own dishonesty. The truth they have been suppressing for months is the only way out of their precarious situation. They are about to admit their depravity in what they believe to be their masterwork of deception. But their oncoming breakdown is not where this story starts. As you stand in the center of a hurricane they made and watch their world fall apart, you are untouchable at the start of this drama. They were playing checkers when you were playing chess, and they're only now discovering that they never had control of the board. Since comprehending the mastermind psychology is essential to realizing the scope of what is about to happen, let's start by discussing them. This person did not fall into dishonesty by accident. Someone who inhales manipulation like oxygen is this person. Their whole life has been around creating fictitious worlds and observing others as they dance to their imagined reality. They recognized something that frightened them when they first saw you. Real power. Power that emanates from someone who understands exactly who they are and won't compromise that truth for anyone. Not the sort that comes from control or manipulation. Genuine knows genuine, and they knew they were fake. Therefore, your sheer presence threatened their house of cards. Thus, they acted as skilled manipulators would. They started researching you to identify potential points of attack, rather than to comprehend you. They observed your movements in the world, the people you interacted with, and your priorities. They were mapping your vulnerabilities, creating a psychological profile, and getting you ready for a conflict you had no idea was coming. Their plan's intricacy was its genius. Not a single basic falsehood about you was made by them. They used a complex web of deliberate lies, half-truths, and blatant fabrications to make you seem like someone you weren't. They portrayed you as manipulating if you were giving. They portrayed you as conceited if you were self-assured. They portrayed you as corrupt if you succeeded. Here's what they didn't expect, though. Their fixation on ruining you would lead to their own demise. They weren't addressing their own deteriorating foundation every time they spent fabricating lies about you. They were so focused on bringing you down that they forgot to protect their own standing. Their strategies were more complex than just rumors or lighthearted defamation. This was the most subtle form of psychological warfare. They knew how to turn your own generosity against you. They portrayed your attempts to be understanding and give others the benefit of the doubt as being naive. They painted your attempts to keep relationships intact in the face of mounting conflict as desperate or manipulative. The mastermind was an expert at shifting targets, setting unachievable benchmarks that altered your life the instant you encountered them. Did you do anything straightforward and typical? They would exaggerate it and then impose new regulations that conveniently made your normal activity appear to be a transgression. The purpose of this psychological assault was to keep you off balance and reactive rather than perceptive and strategic, by making you question yourself all the time. Listen, what you honor increases. When you honor God with your best, He breathes on the rest. If this word lifted you, tap Super Thanks and plant $20, $50, or more. Your generosity fuels outreach, prayer, and practical help. See yourself stepping into overflow, not by chance, but by covenant. Honor the Lord with thy substance. Proverbs 3 verse 9 KJV. Their use of community dynamics to spread their misinformation was what gave their campaign its especially evil tone. They did more than only circulate gossip. They established whole echo chambers in which their fabricated story could reverberate, earning legitimacy via repetition rather than veracity. They knew that if enough people told the same falsehood, it would start to seem true to people who weren't listening. Although most people didn't notice it at first, the foreshadowing was present from the start. The way they talked about you with a hint of overconfidence. The stories were not sufficiently specific to be verified, but they were sufficiently detailed to appear credible. The feelings that didn't seem real, but rather a little staged. Because you were selected, you were able to recognize these signals. What others overlook, you see. Since their purpose was arguably the most primitive, and thus the most dangerous, the second character in this drama merits particular consideration. This individual didn't aid in your demise for selfish or strategic ends. Your presence served as a reminder of everything they were not and could never be, which is why they did it, because it necessitates the envious individual to continuously recognize the superiority of their target. Jealousy is an intriguing feeling. They had to face the reality that you had something they longed for but were unable to obtain every day. Your innate charm, your self-assurance, and your capacity to draw sincere respect and adoration, all of it acted as a constant reminder of their own shortcomings. However, they choose to follow the path of destruction rather than utilizing that recognition as inspiration to better themselves. They would make sure you couldn't have what you had if they couldn't. Even if it meant poisoning their own souls, they would bring you down to their level. This individual turned become the rumor mill's motor, enthusiastically disseminating each falsehood the mastermind concocted. They embellished the story with their own embellishments, their own interpretations of your behavior, and their own poison. They weren't merely lying again. They were making them better, more lethal, more plausible, and more harmful. The lovely irony is that they were oblivious to the truth of their circumstances because of their jealousy. They didn't realize they were being used as pawn in someone else's game, since they were so intent on pulling you down. Though they never planned to share any actual authority or reward with them, the mastermind required their excitement and willingness to get their hands dirty. Keep an eye out for the warning indicators that have been mounting, such as their growing desperation, their intensifying efforts to persuade others of your alleged misconduct, and their growing loneliness as others start to realize their fixation. They're going to discover that jealousy is a poison that ruins the vessel in which it is contained. However, the role of this accomplice is much more perverse. To see you fail, they were prepared to forego their own reputations and relationships. They strained relations with acquaintances they had in common, who declined to support their anti-you campaign. As their attacks grew more illogical and fanatical, they undermined their own credibility. They were so overcome by jealousy that they failed to recognize how it was killing their own lives in real time. Their celebration of each perceived setback in your life, while simultaneously claiming to be the victim of your alleged misbehavior, was the most striking feature of their behavior. Their motivation's actual nature was shown by this conflict. They weren't looking for safety or justice. They were looking for the sinister gratification of seeing someone they admired go through hardship. The character in this drama, who knew better but remained silent, was arguably the most annoying. This person was aware right away that the story being told about you was entirely made up. They might have cleared your name right away because they had access to information. They had the moral right to declare the truth and put an end to the lies. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. However, they opted for complicity rather than bravery. Why? Because somehow your ruin was useful to them. To further their own goals, they needed you out of the way. They relished the commotion and drama that accompanied the fabricated story. They chose self-preservation over justice because they were just too weak to resist the flood of lies. The quiet of this individual was not neutral. Allowing injustice to thrive was a deliberate decision. They opted to allow lies to pass for truth every day they stayed silent. They actively engaged in the assassination of your character in every conversation in which they failed to protect you. Silence, however, has a way of turning into complicity. Additionally, complicity might turn into guilt. For months, this individual has been bearing the consequences of their decision, seeing you endure false charges while having the ability to put an end to it. The psychological pressure that has been building up inside of them due to that guilt is ready to blow up. Being torn between conflicting allegiances and self-interests has caused their internal conflict to intensify. On the one hand, they are aware that it would be morally correct to speak up. However, They fear the repercussions from you, who might not pardon their earlier silence, as well as from the conspirators who relied on them to remain silent. They had not realized how draining it would be to keep up their front of neutrality. Every discussion turned into a deliberate deflection dance. Their concealed knowledge weighed heavily on every exchange with you. Their growing shame was compounded by each day that went by. They learned that truth involves no effort at all, while complicity demands ongoing exertion to sustain. The impending disclosure will reveal not just the falsehoods that have been spread about you, but also the actual nature of this individual behind their meticulously preserved facade. They will soon discover that being silent in the face of injustice is really a way to contribute to it. When you stopped responding as they anticipated, the first flaw in their flawless plan emerged. They required you to frantically defend yourself, to become irrational and emotional, to provide them with justification for their assaults. You turned into an observer instead. You took a step back and observed their deceitful apparatus with the cool clarity of a self-aware person. Their entire organization was affected by this change in your behavior. The strategist was baffled by the failure of their psychological warfare. Why you weren't breaking under the strain was beyond the jealous accomplice's comprehension. In this fight, the quiet enablers started to wonder if they were on the right side. It was your shift from victim to spectator that made all the difference. All of a sudden, you weren't following the rules of their game. You weren't providing them with the responses they required to support their story. You started becoming erratic, and manipulation hates erratic behavior. You started becoming erratic, and manipulation hates erratic behavior. The discrepancies between many accounts of what happened and the cooperation of sources that don't seem to be related. As you began to piece things together, you discovered the full extent of their plot against you. More importantly, though, you started to notice the cracks in their alliance, the silent enablers growing guilt over their complicity, the masterminds growing frustration with their accomplices' incompetence, and the jealous people's growing resentment at being used as a tool. The pressure was mounting, and you could feel that an explosion was coming. At this point, you fully realized your chosen nature, not as a victim of their plots, but as a force of truth that was too strong for their lies to contain. Their entire fictitious construction started to collapse just by virtue of your presence in your true power. Everything has altered because of something that happened. It was too much for the masterminds to handle. They were avaricious and attempted to take their network of lies too far. They couldn't fulfill the promises they made to their accomplices. They must disassociate themselves from previous partnerships because their other plans ultimately caught up with them. The outcome is more important than the specifics. The pressure is about to break someone. The burden of upholding several lies, overseeing numerous deceptive relationships, and monitoring a growingly intricate network of false narratives has become intolerable. Their inevitable demise is so lovely because it is the result of their own overreach and avarice. They wanted to grow their business after being inebriated from their early success and controlling the narrative around you. They used the same strategies to try to control the lives of others. They made promises of incentives to their accomplices that they never meant to fulfill. Their depravity is interrelated, so when one thread starts to come loose, the whole thing starts to come apart. Their falsehoods about you were only one facet of a wider scheme of dishonesty that affected many facets of their lives. Keeping up the front about you grew more challenging and less lucrative as the demand from these other schemes increased. Additionally, they might have come against someone even more vicious than themselves, someone who recognized their deception and reversed their own strategies. Being outmaneuvered by someone who knows their techniques better than they do is the best way to expose a manipulator. Rondration, the jealous accomplice's mounting rage, was the first clue. They have been waiting for their prize for helping to destroy you, but it hasn't arrived yet. Indeed, people are starting to suspect that they may have been duped. The story they helped fabricate about you is turning out to be just as untrue as the promises you made to them. Even worse, the silent enabler is beginning to realize that they have sacrificed their integrity for no reason at all. They believed that by remaining silent, they would be protected, but in reality, they had been complicit in something far worse than they initially realized. As they become aware of the full extent of what they have been a part in, the remorse is turning into panic. However, the mastermind is in the worst possible position. Their co-conspirators are starting to turn against them, and their meticulously built empire of falsehoods is collapsing. Their own allies are now attacking them with the same lack of commitment and integrity that they use to control others. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. They set the stage for their own demise, which is the lovely justice of this situation. They made sure that their relationships would eventually fall apart due to their own contradictions by establishing them on a foundation of deceit and manipulation. Observe how they behave as their world starts to fall apart. In an effort to keep control of the story, the mastermind grows increasingly combative and frantic. They begin to make errors, leaving behind proof of their manipulation and going against what they have said before. It dawns on the envious accomplice that they have been exploited as pawn in someone else's game. Their rage at being deceived themselves takes the place of their eagerness to ruin you. They begin to doubt the tales they have been given, the assurances they have received, and the part they have been required to play. The weight of their cooperation is too much for the silent enabler to endure any longer. New proof of the wrong they've permitted to thrive by their silence is presented every day. They are trying to find a method to release the psychological pressure that is becoming intolerable without causing themselves any harm. At this point, honor among thieves turns out to be a myth. Relationships that are founded on shared corruption rather than common principles eventually fall apart when the corruption becomes too much to handle. The climax of the foreshadowing that has been developing during this whole adventure is now approaching. This moment of total collapse has been the result of every minor inconsistency, every moment of uncertainty, and every fissure in their united front. Someone is going to say something, and when they do, there will be a dramatic collapse of the entire house of cards. The individual getting ready to speak has been forced into a difficult situation by their own actions, and the only way out is by speaking the truth they have been keeping to themselves. This will not be a gradual admission of guilt or a gentle disclosure. This will be a complete confession motivated by self-preservation and desperation. They will reveal not only their own involvement in your character assassination, but also that of their fellow conspirators. Legal pressure, financial repercussions, or just realizing that their silence is no longer protecting them could be the impetus for their confession. The floodgates are set to open spectacularly, no matter what compels people to speak. This will not be a strategic revelation that is controlled. Throwing everyone else under the bus will be a desperate attempt to save themselves. When someone who has spent their entire life manipulating others finally loses it, they reveal everything. An unstoppable stream of animosity toward their co-conspirators, years of repressed guilt, and fear of the repercussions will explode. They'll uncover information you never suspected, connections you never thought imaginable, and motives that are much more petty and spiteful than you could have ever imagined. The full extent of the plot against you will be exposed by the confession. The number of participants, the length of time it had been planned, the sophistication of their tactics, the coordination of their attacks, the fabrication of evidence, and the manipulation of others into believing their lies. Furthermore, it will reveal their motivations, including the cold calculation that inspired one to cooperate, the petty envy that drove another, the cowardice that caused them to remain silent in the face of injustice, and the total lack of integrity that enabled the entire plot. Observe the speed at which the social dynamics around you change when this fact becomes apparent. People who were suspicious of you will suddenly realize how valuable you are. People who fell for the lies will rush to put the liars out of their lives. Your demonstrated innocence will cause the entire narrative framework that was established around your supposed guilt to rearrange itself. Truth has the charm of being uncontrollable and uncontainable once it begins to flow. The first individual to come out will set off a chain reaction of disclosures, as others scramble to expose their fellow conspirators and lessen their own responsibility. When the envious accomplice realizes they have been used and abandoned, they will turn viciously against the genius. They will provide proof of coordination, divulge intimate discussions, and reveal the calculating coldness that underlies what they formerly believed to be righteous rage. Desperate to absolve themselves of responsibility, the silent enabler will divulge specifics about their knowledge, and when they became aware of it, they will acknowledge their weakness and divulge the facts they could have given to clear your name right away. Even the mastermind will try to control the damage by assigning blame to their accomplices when they are completely exposed and isolated. They will assert that they were misinterpreted, that their intentions were misstated, and that they were coerced into doing things they later come to regret. They are now using the same tactics against you: deception, coercion, and character assassination, again against one another. Their attack strategy has turned into their demise strategy. Your vindication will be more than just full as their confessions flow freely. It will be too much to handle. All of their falsehoods about you will be shown to be projections. All of their accusations will turn out to be deflective. They will reveal that every character defect they assign to you actually exists in them. They had to concoct motivations that never existed, overlook your true character, and reject your genuine accomplishments in order to create the false narrative they did. However, truth tends to come to light, particularly when it is based on the testimonies of those who have never valued honesty in the first place. What they didn't want to expose through their confession will be how exceptional you truly are. That someone would take such drastic measures to damage your reputation. They are lying about you by spending so much time and effort on manufacture, for them to enlist a number of people in their anti-you campaign. That illustrates the strength and danger your true self poses to their delusional reality. Clearing your name is only one aspect of this vindication. It's about bringing to light the sharp difference between real power and fake influence. You were just being yourself while they were busy fabricating stories and playing political games, and that sincerity turned out to be more potent than all of their plots put together. This is where your chosen nature really comes into its own. You have not been damaged or even devalued by this event. On the contrary, it has made you even more strong than you were before. Injustice has put you to the test, and you have come out of it not only unharmed but changed. Now you have something priceless: the capacity to see right through facades. Manipulation is obvious from a distance. You are aware of the distinction between transactional and genuine connections. You are aware of who supports you when the story is unclear, and who has the guts to tell the truth when it is more easy to tell lies. The abilities you acquire throughout this experience: strategic thinking, emotional fortitude, pattern detection, and observation. These are more than just survival strategies. You will benefit from these superpowers for the rest of your life. Adversity has made you stronger. More significantly, you now fully trust your own judgment. You stuck to your truth even when everyone else was telling you that you were incorrect about yourself. You held on to reality even while the entire social milieu was gaslighting you. Participants in your character assassination will face isolation and dishonor. The people who stayed neutral will be shown to be cowards, and the few who supported you during the difficult times will be seen to be honorable individuals. This cleaning of the social environment goes beyond simple vindication. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand, plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. People who were prepared to accept unsubstantiated claims about you are no longer in your immediate vicinity. Relationships with people who could be used to influence you to turn against you are over. You are no longer squandering time on unworthy individuals. From now on, the foundation of your new relationships will be mutual respect, honesty, and authenticity. People will come up to you and sincerely admire the way you handled this circumstance. Your unwavering character and demonstrated integrity will attract them. Not only is your reputation repaired, it is improved. You are now renowned not only for your skills and accomplishments, but also for your fortitude, honesty, and capacity to remain true to who you are in the face of adversity. These are uncommon attributes that are truly respected. The best part of this is that you accomplished it without sacrificing your morals. To defeat them, you didn't have to become like them. There was no need to deceive, coerce, or plot. All you had to do was stay true to yourself, and that truth ended up being their downfall. They were annihilated by their own means. The instability that brought down their entire plot was caused by their lack of honesty. The circumstances for their own betrayal were brought forth by their readiness to betray others. They were vanquished by the inevitable results of their own decisions, not by you. This distinguishes long-term strategic success from short-term tactical triumphs. They used deceit to gain some temporary victories. However, the roots of their own demise were buried in their techniques. By upholding your moral principles, you created something that was grounded in reality and could not be destroyed. Becoming like their adversaries does not help the chosen ones win. They triumph because they are so true to themselves that those who oppose them demolish themselves in the process. Their darkness wasn't the only thing exposed by your light. It prevented them from seeing their own shortcomings until it was too late. Recall how this started when you stood unaffected by their hurricane and watched as their world collapsed without flinching. Now that image reappears, elevated and changed. Even while you remain upright, everyone can now see what you've always known, that your foundation was impervious to their storm. Their own corruption is now demonstrated by the false narrative they created against you. Every falsehood they have told about you speaks poorly of them. Their actual nature is revealed by every attempt at persuasion. Every plot they took part in exposes the true nature of their meticulously crafted facades. This event has unequivocally shown that you are chosen. You made it through their fiercest assaults. When they attempted to make you doubt reality, you remained sane. When they attempted to persuade you that you were the issue, you refused to compromise your integrity. When they tried to change your tale, you managed to stay true to who you were. You're stronger, smarter, and more powerful than ever after the storm they made to destroy you has passed. They are about to confess. Their truth is coming to light, and you've been fully vindicated. You turned their attack into your victory rather than merely surviving it. This is what being selected means. It is not that you are immune to attacks, but rather that you may use them to your benefit. Not that you won't encounter falsehoods, but that you will come out of them with your truth more brilliant than before. It's not that you won't run into foes. It's just that you'll vanquish them just by being yourself. They have destroyed the false narrative they created against you. Your real tale endures, stronger and more captivating than before. You've been proven right. You have won,